Good Tuesday morning, everyone, and thanks for joining us from the Ohio AgNet, the voice you know with the News You Trust studio, sponsored by the Grain Equipment Company, where innovation meets execution. I'm Joe Everett. Well, currently 66 degrees outside here at the farm this morning, as I've talked to some folks around the Buckeye State saying great planting progress is being made. Not so much here in my local area. We just got too much rain on Friday. Last night I started to see a little bit of spraying and fertilizer being put on, so I look for some more activity to begin today. As we look to the calendar, follow along with Wilmington College and the Ohio AgNet May 1st and 2nd for the latest news and updates from the 97th Ohio FFA Convention in Columbus, Ohio. Well, a lot of activity in Western Ohio yesterday. U.S. Ag Secretary Rollins and Governor DeWine visited Weaver Eggs. Our very own Joel Penorwood caught up with Alex Weaver, president of Weaver Eggs. Here's a clip.
We feel very blessed and very privileged to have the Secretary of Ag here as well as the Governor. Today we got into the topic of avian influenza, and the members, industry shareholders shared their thoughts and their experiences on what they've gone through, and we then got into some of the solutions or things that we might have in our toolbox that we can use to help, hopefully prevent another bird flu outbreak, but also how to, if it does happen again, come back stronger and better and quicker.
Again, that was Alex Weaver of Weaver Eggs. Stay tuned to the full story from Secretary Rollins' visit. Well, China says it will not be affected by the loss of U.S. grains and oilseeds. China's grain supply will not be affected by the loss of U.S. feed grain and oilseed imports, thanks to the abundantly available substitutes on the global market and sufficient reserves at home. The world's top buyer of soybeans is set to receive a mammoth amount of oilseed from South America in the second quarter, easing a supply shortage and helping to further cool animal feed prices. Inbound shipments, mainly from Brazil, Argentina, and Uruguay, are set to climb more than 30 million tons during the period from April to the end of June. China has moved to diversify its sources of grains in recent years and has shifted to buying more Brazilian soybeans as the trade war sparked by President Donald Trump's tariffs makes purchases of U.S. crops unviable. American grains like soybeans, corn, and sorghum can be easily substituted, and the supplies of the international market are quite sufficient. Even without purchases of U.S. feed grains and oilseeds, there won't be much impact on China's grain supply. Well, over the past week, some farmers have been able to make some planting progress. Let's see how they're getting along. Coverage of the Ohio Crop Progress Report is sponsored by Unleaded 88. Save on fuel with the blue handle. Fill up with Unleaded 88. Discover more at ohiocornandwheat.org. Starting with the national numbers, 24% of the corn was planted nationwide as of Sunday. That is 1 point behind the 25% last year and 2 points ahead of the 5-year average of 22%. As for the crop development, 5% of the corn was emerged as of Sunday. That is 1 point behind last year, but 1 point ahead of the 5-year average. As we looked at soybeans, an estimated 18% of the intended soybean acreage was planted as of Sunday. That is 1 point ahead of last year's 17% and 6 points ahead of the 5-year average of 12%. As we look to winter wheat, an estimated 49% of the winter wheat was rated good to excellent as of April 27th, up 4 points from 45% the previous week and consistent with 49% at the same time last year. As for the crop development, 27% of the winter wheat was headed nationwide as of Sunday. That's 1 percentage point behind last year's 28%, but 5 points ahead of the 5-year average. Now looking at your numbers from the Buckeye State, corn planted is rated at 8% complete this week. That's up 6 points over last week and is 3 points ahead of last year and 2 points ahead of the 5-year average. Oats planted is at 51% complete this week. That's up 14 points over last week, but is 9 points ahead of last year and is 6 points behind the 5-year average. Oats emerged is at 12% complete this week. That's up 6 points over last week, but is 6 points behind last year and 12 points behind the 5-year average. Soybeans planted are rated at 10% complete this week. That's 4 points ahead of last year and 4 points ahead of the 5-year average. Then winter wheat joining is at 55% complete this week. That's up 24 points over last week, but is 26 points behind last year and 8 points behind the 5-year average. Stay tuned. We'll be back with today's weather after this.
Those long days in a tractor cab can really put a cramp in your body. So while refueling or refilling your equipment, walk around the tractor a few times or do a few head-to-toe stretching exercises. When fatigue does set in, that's when injuries and mistakes happen. Know when it's time to take a break and recharge. Let's make sure everyone gets home safe and sound. This message from the Ohio AgNet, OSU Extension, Ag Safety and Health Team, and this station.
Nearly 90% of farmers say that financial worries, constantly changing market conditions, and other uncontrollable variables take a toll on their mental well-being. Add in the weather and family dynamics, well, it's a lot to handle alone. But did you know farmers and their families can receive free confidential services from licensed professionals? Support is available 24/7 to help with the challenges you face. Look for Farm Family Wellness Alliance under the Resources tab at farmfoundation.org. Take care of yourself. Your well-being matters.
You're tuning in on the Ohio AgNet. Today's weather brought to us by Seed Consultants. Simply better performance online at seedconsultants.com. Here's the forecast.
We've got a little bit of rain activity that wants to move through the Buckeye State today. I'm Chief Meteorologist Ryan Martin. Let's take a look at that Ohio Ag weather update. Frontal boundary working in, and as it does so, it's coming into some very warm air, so that's a recipe for thunderstorms. I don't think it's going to be a large, wide-ranging, strong to severe outbreak, but a few garden variety thunderstorms are possible. I think we end up with about 60 to 70% coverage of rains that are going to be anywhere from a quarter to 3/4 of an inch today. The rest of the state probably sees a little bit of activity, and everybody is seeing clouds from time to time, but just who gets good rains and who doesn't is going to be very hit and miss. Everybody's dry for tomorrow. Wednesday looks dry statewide, sunshine dominating, and then we gear up for another round of moisture coming in for the turn of the month. Thursday the 1st into Friday the 2nd, we see scattered rain showers and maybe a few thunderstorms, a quarter to 3/4 of an inch again, coverage 100% of Ohio. Clouds linger through most of Friday, so Friday's going to be a little bit gray and damp. I don't think we do a lot of drying on Friday, may even add another spit or a sprinkle here or there. But the weekend is dry. Cooler on Saturday, better on Sunday, sunshine and blue sky all the way through both days. And then I think we're dry all of next week. Plenty of activity happening to the west and to the north of us. But right here, I think we are wide open for field work next week, depending on how much rain you get this week. I'm meteorologist Ryan Martin.
Hey, thanks, Ryan. Well, farm bankruptcies are on the rise again in 2025. Family farm bankruptcies increased by 55% last year compared to 2023 and are trending even higher this year as farmers continue to grapple with the depressed agriculture commodity prices and high input cost. While much of the industry-wide distress predates his second term in the White House, President Donald Trump has quickly nudged more farmers closer to the brink of going under and created turbulence for producers trying to make ends meet. Unpredictable tariffs, immigration, overhaul, federal program cuts, and frozen agriculture department funding are now part of the discussions farmers are having as they seek financial help. What is going on in Washington is the subject of almost every conversation that I have had, said farm bankruptcy attorney David Mills. Farm bankruptcy filings soared in 2019 during the height of Trump's trade war with China, which targeted U.S. agriculture with a sweeping retaliatory tariff regime mirroring the response China is pursuing today. Trump's administration sent farmers an estimated $23 billion, covering export losses to try to stop more farms from going under. Well, some good news for Ohio corn farmers as the EPA announces year-round E15 waiver. Let's check in with Joel Norwood for an update.
Our guest, Tad Nicholson of the Ohio Corn and Wheat Growers. And Tad, thank you so much for joining us. Big day for E15.
Well, yeah, the long-awaited announcement of the summertime driving season emergency waiver came out today. That's a really welcome thing. It helps us out this summer. Our work still continues, though, on getting that permanent fix. So we don't need to do this every summer. I'm sure everybody that supports ethanol and agriculture wants to get this federal fix done.
What do you see as far as the next way to get that done? Do you have anything on the horizon?
Well, yeah, it's going to be in budget reconciliation, be the next chance for this. And so that, there's several cracks at this. And so we're going to step up to the plate every time we have an opportunity this summer. That's the very next one, and that's where our focus is.
Outlook looks good, do you think?
I'm paid to be optimistic, Joel, and so I am very optimistic on this. I think that we have an excellent shot.
It's one that many Ohio corn growers are pushing for. Continue to call their Congress to do it?
Absolutely. We have that. We had so many farmers in Ohio, over 1,000 reacted, and that's really a high number for us to get comments into the EPA, asking them, and our congressional members, to asking them to make this federal fix a priority, and they did that. And so we're still pushing. The job's not done.
Tad Nicholson of Ohio Corn and Wheat commenting on Monday's announcement about E15.
Hey, thanks, Joel, for the update. Well, bird flu in cows shows no signs of adapting to humans yet. H5N1 grows well in dairy cow udders, which may actually be good news for people. When traces of H5N1 bird flu showed up in cow's milk last year, it raised fears that the virus could become more infectious to humans. So far, that hasn't happened. Cows were surprise hosts for the virus. Influenza viruses latch onto sialic acid attached to sugar molecules that decorate the outside of the cells. It turns out that the way sialic acid is attached to some sugar molecules on cows' mammary gland cells resembles attachments in birds. This arrangement allows the H5N1 virus to infect birds and cows. Cattle also have sialic acid attachments like those that flu viruses use to grab and infect human cells. Researchers feared that having both human-like and bird-like receptors in the same mammary glands might make it easier for bird flu viruses to adapt, making transmission between people easier. Stay tuned. We'll be back with your grain analysis and your overnight markets after this.
AmeriHealth Caritas Ohio is your Medicaid plan for more. More benefits, more rewards. We know that good health means more than just seeing a doctor when you're sick. Eligible members can receive extras like home-delivered meals and family essentials, like baby carriers and kids' school supplies. Members can even earn rewards for playing mobile health trivia games. Learn more at AmeriHealthCaritasOH.com and call the Ohio Medicaid Consumer Hotline at 1-800-324-8680 to choose AmeriHealth Caritas Ohio.
It's now time for today's market analysis, which is brought to you by the Louis Dreyfus Company, excited to be building the newest state-of-the-art soybean crush facility in Upper Sandusky, Ohio. Call 574-566-2113 for information on marketing soybeans to LDC. Here's Ryan Martin.
Grain markets started off the week on a mostly lower note. Corn and wheat leading the charge downwards. Soybeans traded higher for a decent amount of time, midday and afternoon yesterday, but only ended up with old crop a little bit higher, new crop down. And the bean oil was up, but came off of its highs as well. What were the highlights yesterday? Well, it sounds like the U.S.-China trade war is currently at a stalemate. Both sides apparently are working to cut trade deals with other nations. The U.S. is saying it's waiting for China to make concessions to start a trade dialogue, while China is waiting for the U.S. to do the same thing. Neither side willing to budge, and it sounds like China is going to, particularly Brazil, but a host of other nations as well, to try and get trade on, trying to make it known they do not need the U.S. to be able to move forward. Soybeans is looking at the major impact from this trade war. Yesterday, the market went from sharply lower early on to get some modest gains at midday. But that was mostly on rumors of restarting the U.S. biofuel credits. Those rumors had been out since last week, and it just kind of came home to roost here today a little bit further. Brokers report that Managed Money sold 5,900 contracts of wheat yesterday, 4,800 contracts of corn. Did actually be on the net sell side of soybeans based on the early on losses. Managed Money sold 3,600 contracts of soy meal as well. Weekly export inspections report out yesterday. U.S. shipped about 65 million bushels of corn, 16 million bushels of beans, almost 24 million bushels of wheat. All exports were larger than the trade expectations. Crop years to date, we've already shipped out 29% more corn year on year, beans up 11% year on year still, and wheat up 15% year on year. U.S. has to average about 16.5 million bushels of wheat exports a week to reach the 24-25 annual forecast. China shipped out the last of their U.S. soybean purchases, with any cancellations being modest this past week. I'm Ryan Martin.
Hey, thanks, Ryan. Now let's take a look at your overnight trade brought to us by Seed Consultants. Simply better performance online at seedconsultants.com. Let's start off with May corn, $4.74.5, down a penny. December new crop corn, $4.49.5, down 3/4. May soybeans, $10.50.5, down 1.5. November soybeans, $10.33, down 1 3/4. July wheat, $5.33 3/4, up 2 3/4. In livestock from yesterday's close, April live cattle $215.65, up $1.40. June live cattle $209.60, up $1.35. May lean hogs $92.95, up 15 cents. June lean hogs $101, down 15 cents. August feeder cattle $294.95, up 65 cents. And September feeder cattle $294.07, up 52 cents. And May class 3 milk $18.29, down a penny. For all the latest agricultural news, you can always find that at ohioagnet.com. Thanks for joining us, and be safe out there this planting season. I'm Joe Everett, and this is the Ohio AgNet.